Hi, and welcome to the Apple headquarters in Cupertino, California. My name is Greg Hiver. This is my second Apple protest in a fairly windy day here at Apple. And apologize, just getting everything set up here properly. So there I am. This is a real short protest. So why did I come back to Apple? And why did I come and do this second protest? Well, I think you have to come and protest about something at least once. But more than once means that you become more committed than just that one time. And that more than twice, you're serious about your commitment. So I plan on being out here again. Just to tell people that I'm very concerned about Apple. So why have I come out for this second protest? I mean, how can my small voice make any difference? And this is about Apple's censorship and what Apple does, who it works with, and why they're aimed at trying to censor conservative speech on their platforms. So, as I mentioned, I'm a small voice. I'm one guy out here in Cupertino, main headquarters. And we all know that Apple's a $2 trillion company. It's got a world-renowned brand. They can squash a lot of people if they want to. And I drag my big sign around, trying to make a sort of a difference by waving my flag and attracting attention to the cause of Apple and censorship. I think we're all affected by free speech limitations. Right now, it's easy to sit back and watch conservatives be denied free speech on big tech platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, especially if you're anti-Trump, anti-conservative. Hey, sit back, but one day it's gonna happen to you. They'll turn on you. It always happens. Anybody who starts censoring people will censor the next level of people. So this message just isn't to conservatives, it's also to liberals, classic liberals, and independents. And hope you take my words seriously about Apple. So I drag out my big sign around and try to make some sort of difference, waving my flag that Apple is a big danger to conservative speech. But to tell you the truth, I kind of lose hope. Sit there and say, God, why am I driving out to Cupertino from Santa Cruz and doing this? I use a lot of gas, time from work. It's kind of crazy, and I don't even know, maybe 1-2 people listen to me. I don't know. I get maybe 100+ views on my posting, and they get a little long. This one is going to be short, I promise you. So it's easy to lose hope that nobody's listening to the crucial message that I'm sounding the alarm on. And that message is Apple, China, and the Democrats are the new axis of evil. And this is my new sign, axis of evil. And we all remember in 1939 what happened. The Nazis began fighting the World War with the Allies. Although Japan came in later than 39, this was essentially known as the axis of evil for many of you who still don't follow much history, and I recommend that you should, to kind of see the parallels of what's going on today. So that's 1939, and so where are we today in terms of the axis of evil? We're right here. So the new axis of evil is Apple, China, and the Democrats. And what are they doing? Well, they're starting to tamper with elections is one thing. And that's pretty serious when you're an activist company with progressive causes and cancel culture, at your side, and you start working with one political side of the aisle to censor conservative speech during an election year, and that's called election tampering. We also have tyranny. So basically, Apple, through the Democrats, prevents any kind of negative press on China to appear in the US. Don't want to rile up the troops. And that allows China to run a tyrannical operation and abuse human rights of people. There's also censorship, and we've seen not only China and Apple being complicit in wiping out over 100 VPNs recently in China to prevent the government from listening in on these VPNs. So China asked for those VPNs to be removed, and Apple obligingly did, to the detriment of free speech in China. But we also see many cases of Apple's own censorship of American voices in its App Store and on its own apps, Apple News and Apple Podcast. Violence. So what we have not only in China, that the CCP is allowed to be violent against its own people, but we've seen Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and how the Democrats aren't calling that out, and neither is Tim Cook here. Nobody's calling out Antifa and BLM for what we would consider acts of domestic terrorism on our soil. We're talking BLM Incorporated, a known Marxist organization. Okay, so we're getting violence in the streets. Why? Because it's an election year, and the Democrats want to threaten us to vote Democrat, or they'll continue with the violence. Apple is complicit in this. And finally, discrimination. The whole idea of identity politics is that whites are inherently guilty of racism, that the term racism has been redefined by the progressive community to mean not only a proclivity against another race, but also that proclivity has to be owned by a certain segment that has power. So if you don't come from a traditionally power group such as the white community, then you are you can use reverse racism and you're not considered a racist person because you have no power. So blacks have no power inherently in society, and so they are allowed to be racist toward white people, and that's acceptable because of these new definitions that are coming out. And I bet you most of you don't know that. So the definitions are changing to better fit the progressive way of separating us by races and then creating a villain in the white person. Okay? So conservatives every single day are being silenced on social media platforms. Apple and Google are progressive, activist, cancel culture companies that manage what is said, heard, and seen on nearly every single mobile phone in the entire world, and who work with Democrats to ignore human rights abuses that go on in China every day in exchange for Chinese labor and access to 1.4 billion consumers, and are willingly conspiring with Democrats to block speech of the conservative movement that offer a different viewpoint. So that's sort of why I'm here again. So I'm going to wrap up here and just say, as we approach the November elections, conservatives see big tech's complicity to work with Democrats to silence conservatives equivalent to election tampering, because these companies are considered to be platforms and not publishers, and that makes the whole difference. It doesn't matter if CNN goes off, MSNBC worked with Democrats specifically only provide their narrative because they're publishers. What companies, high-tech companies, are all operating under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act for platforms, which require them to provide fair and balanced platform access to various opinions, various groups, without bias and without discrimination. The problem is that there is nothing but bias and discrimination in big tech and what they choose to present to the rest of you. And if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see countless numbers of conservatives on YouTube, on Facebook, who are complaining about being demonetized, removed completely, or sanctioned in some way because of simple things that they say that goes contrary to the narrative of the Democratic Party. By the way, my Facebook page is at Greg Hyver, Hyver. But ultimately, the day of reckoning will come when antitrust lawsuits are filed and greater limits are placed on big tech's ability to shield conservatives from leveraging the internet to voice their ideas, concerns, hopes, and dreams. America is about equal opportunity and fair play. That's how the system works. If you deny one side the ability to speak their viewpoints, that's not fair play. That's called totalitarianism. And we don't want totalitarianism in this country. No matter how much you hate Trump, no matter how much you hate a conservative idea, if you're getting one view filtered by a certain segment, a certain political segment, and that's all you get to hear, then you become a zombie and you don't become a free thinker anymore who has access to multiple viewpoints that can allow you to make your own decisions more fairly. But the woke culture doesn't want that. And Tim Cook is part of that woke culture at Apple. This is the woke culture company right here. And it's an activist company that promotes progressive ideas, and it's bleeding into Apple products in this way. And that's censorship and promoting a political agenda one side, and dependent so much on China for its manufacturing and for its consumer population that it will bow down to anything that China wants, including protecting China in the US press and helping to suppress it through the Democratic Party, through the mass media. Okay, so conspiracy theory? I think not. I'll let you decide. Go to my LinkedIn page, Greg Hyver, or my Facebook page, Greg Hyver, and you can find the downloadable version, the PDF of the executive summary of the research I did on Apple. And you can also find the full report. And for anyone interested in free speech, I highly recommend reading that, as it's one example of a big tech company that has pulled its levers, promoting progressive causes and stepping on our rights as American citizens. So my YouTube channel is also uncovering big tech abuses, where I have various protest videos. And believe me, I'm going to go back to Facebook, because Facebook's implementing new October 1 rules on to support the Democrats in the election. And it's tailored. So it's kind of odd that October 1 month before the election, Facebook puts out these new speech rules, which to me is a red flag, and everybody should be concerned about that. Okay, this video's ran a little longer than I wanted. I'm gonna get my American flag here, wave it around, let people see that Apple is not about free speech. So I'm gonna turn my little sign around here, and there we go. All right, thanks a lot for watching. Signing off. Adios, amigos.